Spoken label.
I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed at that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken label.
Hi, it's Andy N from Spoken Label. Thank you today for streaming or downloading another episode of Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up on beginning of 2016 and as of speaking has currently nearly 300 sessions. The full archive is available on Spoken Label bandcamp.com. Although it is available for free for stream and download if you wish, I am always grateful for any sort of kind of donation to enable me to keep the running costs of this podcast going. And enjoy. Take care. Bye bye.
Spoken label.
Hey guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house. Yeah, Thursday morning, yeah. This is not almost Spoken Label session is special, but to do one on a Thursday morning, yeah, particularly Speakeasy night, it's going to be a manic day. But I've got a wonderful guest to me today. And we've been trying to track each other down now for a couple of weeks, and one thing's led to another. Because people wonder have got the fantastic Kate Iron with us today. I've had one or two issues, bits and pieces that I'm not able to make appointment dates with what Kate's wanted to do. And Kate's had a few problems as well, haven't you, Kate? So it's just been a bit backwards and forwards, but we're here anyway. Now, we're here to talk a lot of bits and pieces with Kate today because fascinating stuff indeed this today. Now, Kate, before we start today, obviously, give us your background about yourself as a poet. I know you're originally from the Glasgow area, so tell us about where your creativity came from originally.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I guess I was just always a kind of classic performance kid. I was always doing wee performances in my living room, always kind of making up stories, very kind of hyperactive and narrative obsessed child. And then I guess my mum kind of recognised that. And my mum isn't creative necessarily in her career or anything, but she loves like books and reading in the theatre and stuff. So she kind of really encouraged that I do some kind of youth theatre. So I did that from a young age. So performance was the thing for me. And then when I was 19, I was toying with going to art school because visuals have always been, the visual kind of filmic cinematic world has always been kind of like hand in hand with my writing, I guess. But I didn't want to stay in Glasgow. I struggled here as a teenager, like classic adolescent, unhappy teenager, feeling weird and misplaced in the place they grew up. But the other thing I really wanted to do was study theatre, study drama. So I ended up coming to uni in Manchester to do a drama degree. And I think I was like either want to be a straight up theatre maker or a playwright. It didn't seem like there was many other options. I didn't really know that this idea of like writing for myself, writing like solo work. And then I did a solo performance module on that degree, which I kind of created like my first, I guess, spoken word play, my first spoken word monologue. It was like a 20-minute piece set in a nightclub in Glasgow. And yeah, since then I think for me, my spoken word style has come from playwriting. It's come from like narrative fiction and prose, the idea of telling a story. Also, I'm from Glasgow and I'm really inspired by the way Glaswegians tell stories, that kind of Celtic oral history. And my gran, when she tells stories, she like plays every character. She like pauses for dramatic effect, and I think that is kind of lived on through me. So yeah, since studying drama, I just kind of became very interested in writing solo work. I think it was mainly over lockdown that I started to pair that with a verse and like rhythm, and listen more to people who were doing spoken word. And as well, I think I've just felt like it's so much more accessible to write a poem or a piece of spoken word and then perform it a week later than it is to write and produce a play. It feels much more accessible, open to people who want to try stuff. Yeah, and I just felt really comfortable in that voice, in that kind of the flow of it felt really unencumbered, and I felt really comfortable to speak like that and to get up and explore who I am through spoken word.
Yeah,
so that's like a brief whistle stop tour.
No, I agree with you completely in everything you said there straight away with that. Now, we're here today, obviously, to people wondering, obviously, to talk about your debut album, which we're going to come on to in a few moments. But obviously, before we get onto that, I know you've just done Glastonbury, haven't you, over the past week or so. So tell us about what your experience like Glastonbury were like this year.
It was interesting because I had gone down after doing my solo show, so I kind of wasn't mentally prepared for how intense it was. But yeah, so I was performing in the poetry and word stage, and all the poets were just class people. I met such a good bunch, people like Colleen Wood, Molly Walker, Iona Lee, Imogen Sterling, like just great bunch of people. So yeah, it was really fun to perform there, and just a really like cool experience to be an artist. I think the festival is the most magical, unbelievable place. I'm just not sure that I was in the right mental headspace to be there. It's a shift to do. Like, it's gorgeous, but I think I was so exhausted by doing the play the week before that maybe if I was to go again, I would hope that I had a little bit more of a free brain to be there. But yeah, it was such a cool place. It was such a mega experience, and I'd love to go back next year, like with maybe more of a sort of live show to have like more of a, because I was going just as a poet solo, just vocals, and I'd love to do more festivals like with Jake, with the whole kind of live setup. So that's the goal, I think.
Fingers crossed, definitely with that. So we'll talk about that more in a moment. Now, obviously, before we go into your album, obviously with Jake, and that's the hint right we're here for today. Now, obviously, tell us about I know you did a play the week before, didn't you, as well? So tell us about the play very briefly as well.
Yeah, so it was expanded from a spoken word poem called Golden Time that I had performed for a year or so. And with the Roundhouse, I did a sort of like a young artist residency with them, where I expanded that poem into a full play, a full solo play. So Golden Time is behavioural management strategy used in primary school. I'm not sure if it's used anymore, but certainly for people born probably between 95 and 2010 or something, it was this very well used scheme in schools to basically reward good behaviour with an hour of free time at the end of a primary school week. But if you were naughty, you would lose time. You would have time deducted from your hour. So I kind of used that as a sort of central metaphor to unpack ideas of normality and how we perceive children to be abnormal through their behaviour, and how we deduct time from them, and how that proliferates into adulthood with this sort of supremacy of productivity, and how we are obsessed with saving time, killing time, wasting time, using our time, and how that is, we create these time standards as adults that have been this like overhang from childhood, which if you, like me, are sort of neurodivergent, have a kind of scatty, stimulated brain, that sense that those codes and conducts just don't work. They don't work on children. They're not the way that we should be teaching them. So I performed that solo. So that was my friend Julia Grillo. She directed me, and she was amazing. That was a kind of year's worth of work, and that all sort of focused on one day. But we're hoping to, because it was part of a festival called Last Word. So we're hoping to take it on tour, funding dependent. That's the dream. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, definitely. And what I found, I didn't even know about the place you told me a few minutes ago. And obviously, I knew just in Glastonbury done this, but we're not even here to talk about any of this stuff, really. We're here to talk about your debut album, which has just come out as well. And first of all, it made me think with the other bits and pieces, I thought, how has your head not exploded? Do you look back at it now? You've done like Glastonbury, you've done the play, and you just put your debut album out. It's like, do you feel like your head's still like expanding over it?
Yeah, I definitely am now trying to pick up the pieces. I do this. I have projects seem to all coalesce, and I think I'm fine. And then I have these burnout periods of just trying to recalibrate and try to rest. I mean, I guess I feel comfortable in constant motion. I enjoy being really busy, which I think is something I need to unlearn. I need to know how to sort of keep myself going without loads of stimulation. But I also really, my head is exploding. But then I guess all the projects kind of flow into each other. So a lot of the album is thematically similar to the play. And Jake, the sound designer for the album, was also helping us with the sound for the play. So it feels really like nourishing to have these projects that feel really, really like they're speaking directly to what I want to say as an artist. So now I'm like, oh my God, who am I? What do I do? Because I don't have all these projects in front of me.
I think you do. You've got to learn just to calm down, because I've done it myself before now. And you can end up kind of burnout if you're not careful. Because a true story of me is like, when I've been back in my 30s, I contracted diabetes when I was 39 because I overdid it. I burnt my body out in it. Yeah, you do. It's trying to learn the balance sometimes, I think. And it's like, you've done the right thing. You're just trying to calm down now, aren't you? And try and have some reflection time, probably is a better way for it.
Yeah, it's like learning to do normal human things like cooking and exercising with the same vigor as the creativity, but it is never the same. It's never as fun.
No, it's not. I know that. So I'm 52 now, and I know for a fact I've been diabetic for 13 years. It hasn't slowed me down. It just changed the way I look at things and do things, definitely. So now, eventually, 14 minutes into the podcast, now we're going to get onto the point where what we're planning to talk about today was your debut album. We've already been dropping numerous hints about this. And, debut album is Self-Regulating Behaviours. Now, obviously, we've been hinting at Jake already, a.k.a. Locksy. Now, we need to obviously let people know, first of all, obviously, this is a collaboration album between the pair of you. So how did you both meet in the first place?
So me and Jake both had work on in a gallery, a DIY gallery space called On the Rag, which our friend used to run in Chorlton. It was on Wilbraham Road in an old bank. And he had a immersive soundscape on in the basement called Spiritual, which was a sort of 20-minute odyssey through this sort of faux wellness speaker, kind of AI voice that went very glitched and strange. And then I had an installation with my friend Bridget where we had a video of lots of clips pieced together of Bridget as a child, and I was like eulogizing childhood. We had a spoken word audio with sound of me talking about all the things that we have lost since we've become adults and inherited shame and self-awareness. And me and Jake both independently messaged each other to say that we liked each other's work, and a kind of cross between just like permeating at the boundaries between like installation, sound, visuals. We both mutually liked each other's work and said we should work together. So that was maybe a year before we actually ended up collaborating. But since then, we would kind of became fans, I guess, of each other. So it was a really nice way to meet.
Yeah, I think it's the natural way sometimes you do stuff like that, because as I've told you about my band already, and that's not for this podcast, but yeah, we did something very similar, very, very similar. And you do is like, I think it's the natural thing where you get to become the fans of each other's works. And then it's a case of, I presume this is what happened here. Did you both decide, oh, let's try working on a track together? And is that what happened? Then it built from there, and then did it really?
Yeah, I think the Suburb one was the first one that I sent him, because I wasn't sure what it was yet. And it was this kind of stream of consciousness. And he kind of came back with this dark, droney, celestial thing that has come to kind of like frame the album. And I was like, yeah, that's I love it. And it added such a new layer to words that I wasn't sure on, because they were so tender to me, and so they hadn't found their meaning quite yet. You know, sometimes when you write, you're doing it so subconsciously that it hasn't almost like found its breath, or it's like it's still kind of festering in your heart. But then I felt safe enough to send to him and see how the sound could like amplify and take it kind of away from me as well, remove it from the tenderness. Yeah, so that was the song that I sent him, that we'd kind of been pushing back and forth to each other and toying
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, should we do a quick deep dive on the album? Because there's 9 tracks, and I want to ask you a couple of quick questions about each one, okay? If that's okay, and then because there's a few bits and pieces. I'm not going to, if we went into this full whack, and we'll be here for about midday, and it's 25 to 11 now, because I know some of my questions I could ask you. When you got someone as a writer and a sound technician himself, there's interesting things on choices made on this. So, obviously, then, first of all, then, tell us about where the title for the album came from, Self-Regulating Behaviours.
It's really weird. It's weird. I can't actually track back to the moment it came. But I think I'd been really in a process of self-regulation, trying to understand what that meant. Because I don't think I've ever been someone who really diligently has related the way my body feels to the way my mind feels. I've always thought, if I can deal with it emotionally in my head in a very like cerebral way, it doesn't really matter about how I feel physically. So I wouldn't do things like eating well or getting outside or making sure my environment around me felt in a sensorily pleasing way. But last year I was on different antidepressants. My mental health was quite low, and this word of self-regulation kept coming up from research or from therapy, about trying to make your environment and the things around you more appeasing to your nervous system. And then I think the word behaviours, I liked having it as like this idea that it was something that you were either born with or something that was innate. The idea of behaviours being plural, there being multiple things, I think it just fitted quite nicely. I think I really liked stuff because it was originally a pamphlet. So originally the idea that it was a pamphlet that turned into a performance that turned into an album. I like the idea of it, seeming like almost like a textbook or something, like a little here's how you can 10 easy steps to self-regulating or something. I like that.
That's great. Great idea. Great idea. Now, what first of all made you want to start the album off with the track Attention Seeker? Because I loved the use of the looped vocals in this. It was slightly speeded up. because I think this is a really challenging first track for any album. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hope that people listen to that and maybe don't get scared.
Yeah, it is a bit of a scary track, actually.
Yeah. I think we wanted something that was a kind of overture or something that would sort of shock people or give them a little bit of a I don't know, a glitch or something. That was a kind of like selection of words that were, to me, the sense of being very overstimulated and how that feels inside the head. Almost like this was the kind of beginning of the extent of how it could feel for me. For both of us, me and Jake have similar brains when we feel truly dysregulated. This is the starting point of why then the whole album needs to happen, because this is where we're at right now. And then the rest of the album is trying to sort of heal or try to understand itself from that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. I get it completely. I thought that, and this is me being overanalyzing things now, I felt this was almost like was a false start to the album, really. You've said overture, but I think it's sometimes you deliberately pull the carpet out from under your audience's feet. And I think, and I like that. The stuff past points away my brain analyzes. I think things very weirdly. But I felt the proper start of the album was the second track, Sad Cowboys, because this it was a journey piece, obviously. And it made me thinking, were you looking back at your own roots right back to the beginning on this? Because there was a lot of very clever tricks Jake played on this. And I love, for example, where the Wi-Fi connects briefly in the track. And I thought that fantastic idea.
Yeah, I really loved Sad Cowboy. Again, that was a very quick writing process. But just the repetitive daily motion of a commute can become this journey into the imagination and this yearning to be somewhere else, to disassociate so much that you're in a sort of cinematic landscape. And that's kind of like, journeying from being really, really tightly overwhelmed from your current situation and all the stimulation to then floating away into this ethereal cinematic world where the man next to you is like a cowboy. And I think that was me really like playing with loose language, I think.
Yeah, sure. Very, very, very effective piece indeed. So, okay, the next track, you're going to have to pronounce my pronunciations because of the rubbish. Is it Dopamine, is it? Have I got that right?
Dopamine.
Yeah, I know. See, people wonder what that is. I know. I did my research on Wikipedia on this one because I'm lazy. I know it acts on areas of the brain to give you feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and motivation. Where did the idea for this piece came from? I loved the repeating ambient loop that gets slightly louder throughout the piece, and I think the word backtrot changed the full context of the piece for me halfway at that point. Backtrack, and then the line is withdrawal, but Jake has worked the word withdrawal to almost inaudible, which I really love. Dopamine is something it's a happy chemical. It's something that people with ADHD are deficient in, so are always searching for. It's the reward center of the brain. When you go on your phone, it gives you dopamine, and when you seek validation, it's like an addictive chemical, and something that I think our current culture has become obsessed with. So it's quite a fast, fleeting chemical reaction as well, rather than serotonin, which, serotonin can be received from sunlight or going for a walk or giving care to someone, whereas dopamine is very like fast, almost quite superficial happiness. And it's kind of about a toxic relationship with dopamine, and kind of treating it as if it's a romantic, a romantic partner. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe know that feeling of being in that kind of push and pull relationship with dopamine, with their reward center, with how they seek validation. I get completely that. So does it? Was there any tracks in the album when Jake would send things back to you, you'd be sat there thinking, and I'm going to swear here, so I do apologise. You got to say back at a rough track of them. You're sat there thinking, "Fucking hell," like that. Or did you pretty well get an idea what you're going to send you all the time? And did you really?
No, so basically, because we'd done the performance of the album maybe last October, I knew roughly what the sonic landscape was like. But then when he started to really fine tune and really go deeply in with the details, and I would listen with headphones on, and I'd just be like in awe of the way that he took the words on a journey. He kind of like removed them and recontextualized them from their original meaning by adding sound, which I just think is the best thing about collaboration. It's like two different art forms can flow so seamlessly together, and someone can surprise you and you can surprise them. So yeah, I was in awe of what he did a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, it's fair play to you. I agree with you on that. Okay, yes, we had a next piece is another journey piece across town. This one. It was My Grand's Bit - Mother's Day. So tell us about that piece next then.
Yeah, I think it's like just the simple moment of going down a different road from one you grew up knowing. Like, we always drove the same way to her house, and one day my dad just drove different way. But I started to think about how these towns, these cities that we know, that we take for granted, these places that we learn, we feel like we have such a good read on, can change in an instant, can grow, can become separate, can expand outward in a way that we never thought was possible. Yeah, and I think a lot of my writing and a lot of my inspiration comes from being in transit and in cars or on trains or buses, and something about this constant flow of information is like the one time that I can sit still and be fine with it, because I've got music on, and it was the way that the mind is allowed to wander in a car. It's given license to wander, whereas when you're at a meeting or with friends, like, it's kind of seen as being, rude or not sociable to let your brain wander away. But in the car, it's fine. And then when I get to the point where I'm imagining what I will see down the street when we've deviated off the beaten track, and I'm saying like clowns eating pigeons or a German shepherd laying eggs, again, it's the mind just going places and being allowed to, and then coming back. So I think a lot of my writing is it's tangential. It runs away with itself. Yeah,
I think writing sometimes does it. It tends to take a mind of its own sometimes. Well, I've done stories or other bits and pieces where I got to the halfway stage, and when I started, I don't know where it was going, and it tends to gallop ahead of yourself sometimes, almost like it's got a life of its own. So yeah, I get that completely. Yeah. Okay. Yes. The next piece, Morning, was the first one I actually heard the specific mention of self-regulating behaviours, which is the title of the album accompanying that one. And I think this was almost like you felt like you were a bit of a counsellor in this piece. So tell us about this piece next.
Yeah, I think we're trying to do that kind of line between counselor, yoga instructor, mindfulness app. Morning was something I wrote when I lived in London, and I was really struggling to I would have these mornings where I'd have to get up super early, and I would have maybe one a week where I would have time, like I'd stolen time. I had time to myself in a morning, and the stress of trying to enjoy time, trying to just sit and exist inside a moment and be there and embrace the stillness, when you are so full of the ways that you can optimize or improve or rest even is taken as something that we can capitalize on. So like you could just have some a green smoothie, or you could do some yoga, or you could write in your journal. Like, it's all that incessant noise to me becomes complete decision paralysis, where I can't even choose one thing. I am just so locked in my exhaustion that I end up just scrolling on my phone or just being completely still and locked in stasis, I guess. So yeah, that was kind of what that one was about, and almost like the voice that you think is like your friend is there guiding you inverts itself and becomes the kind of voice of your inner saboteur, I guess, kind of shouting at you. But I guess it's also whatever people interpret it as well.
Brilliant stuff. It was interesting because Morning and the next piece, Reality, were for me were probably the two darkest. I thought Morning was the most violent track with the music in the background. It really was intense. But I think Reality, which I asked you about next, I think was darker because it's interesting. I thought because the synths were darker. That's why, and I like stuff like I want ambient high skates, thrash. Like I want English. I want a lot of things. I want all the followers on Instagram. That was much more. The Reality was more of a stream of consciousness. But I felt the piece was darker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like Reality is one where I have completely embodied alternate personality, and it's kind of like conjuring the worst part of a person, of the ego, the soul. It's really greedy and and it was a kind of stream of consciousness to write. I've been thinking a lot about reality TV. It's one of my biggest vices, and
I don't watch it. Don't watch it.
See,
don't have the TV. Don't watch it.
Oh, fair play to you, honestly. I mean, I'm really interested in the way that people in the UK especially are become obsessed with this just crap TV. But when I'm low as well, I think I'd been really low and I'd watched like reams and reams of Love Island. But I think a lot about how we need it as a culture to have something that is mind-numbing. It serves a purpose when people are depressed or stressed. You don't necessarily want to engage in culture that is really challenging when your brain is already feeling so under pressure. So it was kind of like leaning into the way we become like fiendish for conflict on TV in a way that is like quite passive as well. When you watch it, you don't really need to be active. You can just let it pass over you. But then there's a kind of line at the end where I say like, I don't want to die alone. It's this sort of final little bit of honesty and vulnerability in amongst what is quite crude. And she's saying, I just want repetition. I just want postpone. That when you're depressed, you just want something that's not going to make you feel worse, something that you can just trust the formula of it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the next track on the album, I think, kind of follows on from what you just said then, actually. So I'm noticing a very careful sequencing of the tracks here, definitely, which ode to the distracted. And I loved the bits about the buttonless, you who don't know when to leave the afters, the 9 to 5 bleep, magnet in the minefield. And I loved that bit where you've got a slight echo then, and glory to you, the distracted. So was that always the plan to put that track straight after Reality and Morning?
Well, the interesting thing is that though that is one order of the track, and on Spotify it's a different order.
Oh, is it?
For some reason. Yeah. So Spotify it's a different order because for some reason they mixed it up. I don't really know what happened. So I've been listening to the tracks in the Spotify order. But it's quite nice that maybe there's a different sequencing. I mean, Attention Seeker is at the start in both. So I think on the Spotify order, Ode to Distracted is at the end, which, yeah, I guess that is kind of, it's trying to be celebratory. It's trying to be like anthemic, I think, towards maybe it's trying to meet myself or meet another child. I wrote it a lot from working with children. I do a lot of work in schools and kind of colleges, and it's trying to look at their quirks and isms and patterns as something quite quite beautiful, quite like something to be really in awe of and to really magnify as like quite a symbolic, beautiful actions that we should praise almost in quite a religious way, rather than seeing kids as being distracted or hyperactive or disrespectful. Like if we can start to frame it in a way that's really in praise of them, I think that was what that was trying to do there.
Yeah, it works. It's very, very effective as well indeed. So on to track number 8, Subterranean Slog. And this was the track that really was like the Black Dog to me, and it was on their Grey album, very minimal, almost like outer worldy sort of keyboardish. And I love the bits in it where you get going about everything is so grey, heartbeats, and the walk that gets cut off, and normal people, normal days. Was this track very spontaneous, was it, to where your vocals came out in this track?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of my writing is, if it doesn't feel kind of like immediately flowing or correct, that I find it very hard to spend time over-analysing it. But yeah, it was a stream of consciousness. It was a lot of thoughts that were coming up from being back in Glasgow and having this like layer of memory that shrouded all the street, all this kind of normal, quite grey, quite concrete new builds. And where I live in Glasgow, that feels quite particularly characterless, and that feeling of that layer of teenage memory that sits under that, of just feeling quite lost and trapped, sits there. So yeah, it's definitely leaning into like quite a dark sort of underworld, and letting the mind wander into these sort of dark places. And I think where I feel quite low or quite numb, it's really hard to get any sort of serotonin from anything, even being out the house. It all gets filtered through this quite like the dark, negative lens, which I think is where this track, that idea of a slog through the suburbs, it's like pulling your body across it, like trying to get somewhere and feeling like you're being weighted down by exhaustion is a feeling that I often get when I'm back there. Yeah, it doesn't really say much for the suburbs of Glasgow, but that's just my experience of them.
Yeah, I think is that I said, this came up in the original take for this part 8, unfortunately. I'd felt as an area, I think you'd moved away from it, hadn't you? And then going back to it, and you're looking like everybody else has got building patios, doing all these kind of things that just don't interest you. And I think as creative people, we operate at different levels to that sort of thing. I think this is a great track, great commentary in this one, really, for me straight away. So it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. The finale.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies.
No, it's okay. I just resonate with that idea of, like, that you feel like other people are stagnating or in stasis, and then you come back, and I feel like I need to be in motion and in growth. But then also there's a layer of judgment from me as well, because these people are just living their lives the way that they feel necessary, and they probably feel more comfortable being in the place that they grew up, and they've got more opportunities maybe, or there's a comfort there when I've felt deeply uncomfortable and had to run away, and I've not found my my forever home, or I don't think I'd be in a situation to be able to buy a home. But yeah, it's there's a lot to like unpack within myself from that one, I feel.
Yeah, I got that straight away. I unpacked a lot of that as well, and I could relate to that one. So, okay, I'm going to get onto the conclusion track now. Well, at least it is on the Bandcamp anyway. I don't.
Yeah.
you threw me that bit before about Spotify being different as well. Yeah, when I get like this, there's a really great track knocking around by Leslie Winner, and I need to play this to you, aka Copyright, because she's beat poet from America, and she calls it that. So there's always, and this is very different. Well, I love you talk about in mental health on sleep. He's turning on the camera and like appointments and taking the clothes off and knackered rangers. I love that line. And you're breathing all the time, telling yourself it's gonna be okay. So, where did this track come from then?
I'm not sure where it originated from. It was just me trying to kind of narrate myself through depression, I guess. But also not, when I get like this, it's like not having the language, not having at a point where I'm not sure what the words are yet. So it's kind of like trying to placate the listener by being like, oh, it's just when I get like this, and then flowing away into these states of self-reckoning. But a lot of it as well is about being a woman and being unable to like look at my own appearance or look at myself in the mirror and just wanting to like shed the skin of someone who's been so perceived from such a young age, from being watched and being judged, and just wanting to be non-existent or something else. So when I say that I want to take the clothes off, or I want get me out of this human woman skin, like it's just wanting to release from the feeling of being like a sort of avatar, presentable woman person. And I think something me and Locksy talked about was the idea of the words or the character within the album being almost slightly androgynous, which is definitely how I feel more comfortable as a performer. So deeply uncomfortable with being sort of perceived not in a feminine way. I just guess the judgment of appearance and being presentable and put together. And this album is allowing me to venture into like a much more weird and strange and ugly persona, I guess, which I like doing. Yeah, so it's all of that.
Yeah, I agree. Before we come to the last couple of wrap-up questions in this, I've got a question I want to ask you about this and the album, because I've said before, I've done music myself and I've fronted spoken word bands myself, and I've sometimes been the musician, sometimes been the spoken word artist. I want your opinion on this. Do you feel like spoken word without music sort of can be very black and white? And doing what Lossy's done for years, it's almost made it like turn into a film, really, isn't it? Almost like an audio film, I think, or colorized it, you could argue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm quite resistant to writing that is so steadfast in its views that it is kind of preaching. I do think there's a place for that, but I like stuff that leans into ambivalence. I definitely write in a way that is trying to not certify anything too specifically. But yeah, I think what the sound can do is you're trying to make people feel stuff, and emotions can't always be translated into these earthly, tangible things we have called words. Like, they exist in a spiritual, cerebral place as emotions, as feelings, and what sound can do is it can have this intangible realm. I sound quite new agey, but I think what he can do is, because Jake is quite a quiet person, he wouldn't mind me saying that. He's quite shy, and I'm very, very, I talk a lot, but I intellectualize a lot.
Don't believe word up.
Yeah, well, it's like you've got I think I intellectualize my feelings rather than feeling them, and Jake really knows how to turn feelings and states of being and these great grand ideas into like tiny little inflections and sounds. So I think they're a great pairing. And yeah, the cinematic quality of it is something I really love. I love a drone. I love little twinkling textural moments. I've listened to it loads, but there's times each time I hear something different that he's created, with voices, with echoes. Yeah, it was just a gift of a collaboration.
Yeah, it flows so naturally, the full album, and that's what I think's been such a gift to the collaboration for you both. I hope you're going to do a second album, are you?
Oh yeah, we're thinking about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
tricky second album, but this one will be, I think, with a lot more up tempo, not necessarily happy, but I think if this album was about a kind of numbness, the next one will be about catharsis.
So no, we're gonna get disco beats in the next album anyway.
Maybe, potentially.
No, see you go. Seriously, apart beyond this album, obviously, what else have you got coming up at the moment then you can talk about?
Well, yeah, just trying to create more with Locksy. And I'm trying to take my show on tour, my solo show. So that will be a kind of process of applications and getting it out there and doing it again. I've got a little short film project that I'm trying to write that's based on a spoken word piece. Yeah, and kind of just trying to get work and freelance life, teaching. I do a lot of facilitation, working with vulnerable people. So trying to just pay my rent for a bit.
Yeah, defrag basically, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, just do my normal job, but also rest, recalibrate. But that won't be long before I've got something that is taking over. I also run a night in Manchester called Blether. We haven't done one in a while, but it's a sort of cabaret, spoken word storytelling event we do in Levenshulme. So we're hopefully going to do one very soon.
Good,
yeah.
Good. Fingers crossed for yourself. Okay, let's have the hard sell then. Where can people get hold of the album, first of all?
You can get hold of it on Bandcamp, on iTunes, on Spotify. Yeah, I think that's it.
Brilliant. Yeah. And if people want to track you down for whatever bits and pieces you do, how can people get hold of you as a person?
They can get hold of me primarily on Instagram at kate.ireland. That's my main, I guess, place for putting on my work and anything that you can find me on. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff, Kate. And that's all our questions today, people. Yes, check out the album. It's a tour de force, and you're gonna get me. You don't get me saying that very often. It blew my head off because it was. I told Kate before, I came across this by chance through Instagram, and I heard the sample track the day before it got released, and I knew straight away. I said to you, Kate, didn't I wanted you on, man, before even hearing the full album, and it really is. It's like a poetry film, basically, man. It's the film, if that makes sense. So, but anyway, I want to thank Kate today. Thank you again, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this one for a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to meet you and to chat.
Yeah, hopefully get a chance to. Yeah, hopefully in person next time as well. So, okay, folks, that's it for today for Spoken Label. Thanks again to Kate Ireland. As Don Callis over at AW Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over. And we will see you all next time.
Spoken Label.